Hello, welcome back. We're on the second match of the day, but it's going to be around 11. My name is Mike. I'm here with Barish, and we're going to be going into this next game ready to see which players can be making it to the top. How was that first game for you?
Oh, that was a very exciting game, a very drawn-out game. I think I'm on maybe 5, 6 out of 6 for games going to time. So that's quite rough, but quite interesting to see how these games play out and maybe not finish all the time, but at the end of the day, these players make it through the day with winning most of their games. So we might just be unlucky on stream, not featuring more wins, I suppose. But yeah, really excited to see what else we have to offer in the next round. We're actually featuring two players that we haven't had on stream yesterday. It is a German player, Jan Hausman, versus an Austrian player, or Swiss more to say, from Patrick Landis. And both of them already on the table. Both of them have been at the stage before. They're currently sitting at 25 points, so quite commanding. Currently, I think, table 2. So 25 out of the possible 30 points is very, very good here. And I'm excited to see how far and how deep they can make it. The matchup also quite interesting. The Giratina Vista versus that Palkia Kyurem deck.
Yeah, we've seen the Palkia Kyurem deck struggle a little bit with Roxanne and things like that earlier on. Once it's going, it's amazing. Just easier to disrupt than a lot of the other decks because it relies so much on that discard from the Kyurem to hit big knockouts. But in this matchup, I think there is an element of balance between the two decks, both trying to hit big numbers against each other. Maybe the Kyurem being too hard for that Giratina to knock out, so it could work as a really good counter to this Giratina deck.
Yeah, and on the other side, we've seen Giratina V before. We have seen the Lost Zone action, the Comfy, all these combinations. We've just seen that in the last game as well from Pedro, of course. So let's see how Jan, who's currently at a very commanding 25 points, can bring this on the table here against Patrick. And yeah, Kyurem, interesting deck. You switch it up from Palkia being the main attacker to Kyurem, where Palkia ends up as a supporter helping setting up that Kyurem.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of different ways you can play it, and with this one we've got an Empoleon in the list, which can be a good disruptor early on against the Comfey and blocking out that flower selecting, but easy to get out of the active spot with Escape Rope. Some people opting for 2 to try and counter that by having one on the bench as well, and other people opting to just have none because it's just not worth it jamming it in the active, but it can steal a game or 2 here or there against the Lost Engine.
Yeah, exactly. So Empoleon, very interesting. Emporia's Eyes, as its ability, blocks all abilities from basic Pokemon in the active spot. So once you get Empoleon in play, all the Comfies, right? Even the Cramorant won't have its ability and therefore has to pay the attacking cost, which typically he's not able to. So he's blocking all these types of attacks and abilities, which makes it very hard.
And it's a very unique ability to have because it doesn't block out Rule Box, where typically Rule Box Pokemon are the ones that are targeted by these blocking effects. On this occasion, it only affects the non-Rule Box Pokemon. So Empoleon very much a counter to those guys, and in particular the Comfey. But we'll be heading into Game 1 here. Palkia Kyurem versus Giratina. And we'll be seeing how things start off with their basics in the active spot. Looking at the prizes here, that Roxanne prize could work out as a nice timing of when it's taken, but it could be locked in there when it's just about needed. On the other side, the Crobat could be a vital piece in Patrick's prizes there, unavailable if an early dig is required.
Yeah, and I think I also see Kyurem V-Star there as well, Kyurem V-Max actually. But yeah, there's the Empoleon right away from the start. Amazing start. We have talked about the ability, shutting down that Comfy's ability, but on top of that, you can also attack for free energies and take out knockouts. So that would be another option, setting up your Empoleon, taking out knockouts while preventing all these abilities.
And the way you'd accelerate that, you've got so many acceleration options in this Palkia Kyurem deck. You've got the Melanie if you want to go down a supporter route, but you've also got the Kyurem VMAX's ability, Glaciated World, which allows you to attach from the top of your deck if there's a water energy there. And Palkia's V-Star ability can surge 3 water energy into play from the discard pile if they're there. So Empoleon, despite having 3 water energies attack cost, is a possibility quite early on.
Yeah, and we see the Battle VIP pass getting out the Palkia and the Raiding Greninja, which has been a theme throughout the weekend, but that's a double VIP pass, getting 4 Pokemon, filling up your bench, increasing the damage if you choose to attack with your Palkia. But then we also see all the puzzle pieces coming to play. That Oranguru and Kyurem into play, that's a great combination.
I mean, double Battle VIP pass. I think that's the dream start. Empoleon in the active, double Battle VIP pass. Couldn't go better here for Patrick. As you mentioned, every component of the deck is on the bench now. We mentioned about the Crobat being in the prizes and might be needed for extra dig, but at this point, I don't think that Crobat's going to be required, as every single one of the vital pieces is there. The only thing I would say now to add is maybe a backup of any of those options, maybe a backup Kyurem, backup Palkia, but realistically you only need one of each of them.
Yeah, we talked about the count on the Empoleons, how many to play. You quite brought up that some players opt to play 2, because one way forward that Lost Zone action is the escape rope, getting rid of Empoleon as the active Pokemon, because its ability only blocks it if it's active itself. So that's one way to play around it. So if players have chosen to play 2 copies, they could just shuffle between these 2, and escape ropes won't help you to negate that ability. However, there's only one in action here. On the same side, Jan, with his Lost Zone action, doesn't have any path to the peak. I'm looking at the list, I'm only seeing one Temple of Sinnoh, which blocks special energies. Talking about special energies.
Yeah, I mean, there is a special energy on the side of Patrick with the Wash Water energy. This is included in decks to counter that Star Requiem from Giratina V-Star. So having that in the list, there's going to be a little bit of back and forth. Putting the Wash Water energy on to protect that is, in particular, Kyurem from getting the one-hit knockout from Giratina V-Star. But as you mentioned, the Temple of Sinnoh is a counter to that. So there's going to be a bit of back and forth countering to try and take each other's techs out.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Not only blocking Giratina's V-Star attack, but on the same side also preventing Sableye from dealing damage to those. So you're immune to Lost Mine action as well, as it blocks all effects of attacks, and that's dealing 12 damage counters is also an effect.
Damage is not affected in this case, I think.
Damage itself not, but placing damage counters counts as an effect and will also be blocked here, which is a quite interesting way to keep your Kyurem safe.
So we're going to be going on here, and we've mentioned all these different interactions that are going to be happening. And to start things off on Jan's side, a Luminion is played. That's not the ideal start for him. He'll be wanting to get those Comfey flower selectings going, but with Empoleon in the active, not going to be a possibility here. So everything right now in favor of Patrick based off of this opening hand. There's going to be a lot of work required for Jan. Does get that Chorus Experiment off the Luminion. That is the best way to kick things off in your first turn to get things into the Lost Zone, and it's going to be needed because that flower selecting is not going to be an easy option.
Yeah, Luminion, however, gives you access to Chorus Experiment, gives you access to 5 cards, but looking at it, 2 Chorus Experiment, 1 Mirage Gate, 1 Battle VIP Pass.
Going to have to take one of those Chorus Experiment for future turns, maybe even both, but it does opt to send one to the Lost Zone. The Mirage Gate has a few in hand, so sends one of those as well. Battle VIP Pass at this stage is fantastic, and probably hoping to get that flower selecting on the go somehow. Maybe an escape rope would be an option. As we mentioned, there's a lot in these lists generally. There's 3 in Jan's list here. So if a flower selecting on the bench comes forward, a Comfey on the bench comes forward, they will be able to flower select off the back of an escape rope, pushing the Empoleon out of the active.
Yeah, we talked about Lost Zone increasing the count and how the basic Pokemon are basic Pokemon without rule boxes won't have abilities thanks to the Empoleon. I think one way to play around that would be that Mirage Gate, increasing your count, Lost Zone count, up enough to be able to use that maybe by using Chorus Experiment a couple of times there, because Comfey is not an option. But we have to see if maybe an escape rope comes into play and helps them to settle up further.
I think that's why the Greninja's been used here, to try and dig for an escape rope, see if it's possible. No instant play. I'm sure if he saw an escape rope, it would be instantly down. There's not many cards you instantly play, but in this matchup, that is the one. So I think we are just seeing
a pass, then it's over to
Patrick.
My
goodness.
Yeah, I think that is an energy over on that Giratina?
It was a capture energy to chain out. I think it was a Battle VIP pass. And then only took the one Giratina and then chained it with the capture energy into the next one. So,
yeah. Considering you have to pay the grass and psychic energy, of course it's better than non-energy, but preferably you would have one of these two to have more flexibility attacking in future turns. However, one of the free energy costs is colorless, so that can also be used, and then pairing that up with the Mirage Gate, which gets you one of the 2 basic energies each, would be there exactly. Yeah,
really interesting list from Jan in terms of capture energy. So you see 1 in play, see 1 in the prize. There's actually 3 capture energy there, which is higher than most we've seen today. We've seen 1 typically in lists just as a bit of extra consistency to help find the Pokemon you need. But on this occasion, 3 is definitely hoping to get an early capture energy off if possible, increase the odds, similar to Battle VIP Pass. You want to be seeing those basic search in the first turns to try and build out your bench. And it's worked beautifully here with Battle VIP Pass on both sides, activating the bench with everything you need. So both players, I'd say, are pretty well set up right now, but that Empoleon really did act as the ultimate blocking tool to win this matchup early on.
And we see that Raining Greninja, thanks to its ability, has already discarded 2 water energies. With that Ultra Ball, there's a third one going into discard pile, and that Ultra Ball actually gets a Kyurem VMAX out. Very interesting. Interested to see if maybe Palkia V-Star also makes an appearance in this turn, using its ability, powering up either Kyurem or that Empoleon. But yeah, there's a Palkia V-Star, and if we see its ability, actually we see a balloon, and having Greninja.
Okay, let's see what's going on here. So Guru being used there to switch onto the top. Greninja has already been used this turn, which is why I think he's signified that by turning it slightly to the side. Obviously, turning it too far will indicate a status condition. We don't want to give away any false information. But actually, no Manaphy on the bench, and that's going to be an opportunity to double snipe Comfey. So not only has he disrupted it with the Empoleon at the start, blocking it with the ability, but coming in with the Greninja, double snipe on Comfey, very little dig potential now. Great disruption from the start from Patrick, and 2 prizes will be taken for that.
Absolutely. Not only disrupting, but taking 2 prizes, getting an early lead there, and making it very hard for Yan to increase his Lost Zone counter and play around that Empoleon. However, if he has access to maybe more of his Comfies in his deck, I think he's playing 4 copies, 2 in the discard pile now, 1 in the prizes, so he has 1 more in his deck maybe. So if he gets access to that, at least he can slowly increase his Lost Zone counter.
We've seen a lot of Manaphy blocking out Greninja's Moonlight Shuriken throughout the weekend, but this is one of the first decks I've seen without the Manaphy getting punished, and it's so important to have that Manaphy available to protect your Comfey. So first turn Empoleon blocking the Comfey, second turn Greninja removing them. This is the kind of start you want to see. We said about the meta right now is less about how can I get my attacks off as quickly as possible, and more about how can I make my opponent miss a turn through being disruptive. And taking out their main draw engine is going to be a great way to do that. And especially as we saw, the Lost Zone is at a very low count. Jan's deck is going to rely on those Mirage Gates to accelerate energy. And when you're only at 2, now 4 in the Lost Zone, 7 is a long way off without Comfey. And we see that Comfey required with the capture energy, but that's still not going to be enough.
Yeah, and we saw that thanks to the escape rope, Patrick was actually able to bring back his Empoleon. Not only that, because it has the Pokemon tool, the balloon attached, it can easily retreat next turn as well. So it's a very great tool to have there, very great access. Looking at the Lost Zone counter currently at 6.
I think he's going to go for the Abyss Seeking here. That's why that Lost Zone counter's gone up. So Abyss Seeking, the Giratina V's attack, just to allow for a Chorus Experiment-like effect. You look at 4 and 2 go in the Lost Zone, 2 into your hand. So another way to increase that Lost Zone counter, but can be a bit too slow in certain matchups. And right now, the prize race has already begun with Palkia Kyurem taking 2. So a turn like that wasted to filling the Lost Zone up is not going to be going too well for Yan.
Yeah, and this is the combo potential that we see right now. There's a Capacious back in his hand, which allows him to get more water energies out of his deck. Then Oranguru can put it on top of his deck, and Kyurem can actually discard the top card, and if it's a water energy, attach it as well. So it's a great way to get energy acceleration into your deck as well.
Yeah, and we see the prize early on we mentioned was Roxanne. Roxanne being in the prizes is vital right now, because that's the biggest comeback mechanic in the game we have. So if you're behind, like we see Yan right now, he needs that Roxanne to be able to start taking that comeback, and it just looks to be too tricky. And it's one of the best comeback mechanics against Palkia Kyurem because of how powerful that deck has to power up. You know, loads of energy needs to be put on the Kyurem, loads of it has to be discarded all at once. If there is a mismanagement of energy, then it can very quickly turn into a Roxanne comeback where 3 or 4 turns in a row missing of an attack.
Yeah, there's the energy retrieval, getting 2 energies from your discard pile back into your hand. So Patrick's hand looks quite commanding, quite comfortable. Options here, Collapse Stadium could get rid of that Luminion on the bench for either player, I suppose, there. And we see a Quick Ball searching for another basic Pokemon, further thinning out the deck, getting out, is that a Kyurem? Is that...
The Kyurem VMAX going to use the Glaciated World, or it's already used it. Just missing the acceleration there. But you can see how much water gets out on the board with Palkia Kyurem. Just all that different acceleration available. Melanie, Glaciated World, and Kyurem to get one extra attachment in both of those per turn. We've already seen the V-Star used with the Star Portal, so that surge of 3 water energy has already happened. And
I think we saw an amazing knockout. Like, that's the great potential of the Palkia. Because both benches were full, you could use the maximum potential of that subspace while doing 280 damage. Actually enough to take out that Giratina V.
Yeah, and at this stage, like I said, the only comeback I can see potentially for Jan's deck is in the prizes with that Roxanne. And I'm not sure if he knows it's in the prizes. It's a very easy prize to miss. The one-ofs in your deck are quite hard to catch, especially when you're searching through for Pokemon early on. You might miss that late game tech because you might think, oh, I'll check for that later on. So it depends on how thorough Jan was with checking the prizes as to whether that Roxanne's been seen. Other than that, disruption-wise, the only way is really to remove energy through knockouts, and that's one of the most typical ways of disrupting a deck is just removing energy, and there's too much of it on the board right now for Palkia Kyurem.
Yeah, it's a very commanding position for Patrick here. I think the Lost Zone counter is now up at 7, which Mirage Gate allows to charge up that Palkia V-Star, Giratina V-Star on the bench. We see a Psychic and Water energy, so maybe he's deciding not to look for that Grass energy to attach to the Giratina. At least the Psychic energy is going to the Giratina, and the Water energy is hitting the other Giratina. Very interesting split there. 1 Grass energy in the prizes. I don't know if he put any in the Lost Zone yet. That's a very interesting split.
Yeah, I mean, we said about the counts of capture energy. 3 capture energy is a great count because it allows that consistency early on.
They're actually in his hand. That's why he couldn't play them out of his deck.
So Grass in the prize, 1 in hand. So
2 in hand, actually.
2
1
in hand.
prizes.
Yeah, so that's what we're talking about when it comes to the count. So 3 capture energy helps with the consistency early on. Another area of energy count that people have been talking about is whether it's 3 grass energy or 4. And a lot of the decks earlier on with 1 capture energy were playing 4 grass. So moments like this will show you why maybe 4 grass energy would be a better count. 1 in the prizes, a few in the hand. Maybe you get 1 in the Lost Zone earlier on as well.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate though, having the option to use Mirage Gate, but then your grass energies that you need particularly are in your hand and not in your deck, so you can't attach them. However, of course, you can have 1 manual attachment, and that's, I think, what we're going to see towards the end of this turn, where maybe the Giratina gets a grass energy and has then all tools to attack. We've seen Escape Rope. Empoleon is coming to the
that's
active.
Brilliant. Because he wanted to come and do another flower selecting. Empoleon comes up. Had a plan for that. Boss's orders onto that Kyurem. Really needs to hit that 10 in the Lost Zone now to be able to get the Star Requiem off. We have seen 2 Chorus Experiments used, 1 in the Lost Zone. So there's got to be 1 more in deck. And not finding it off of that Comfey is going to mean a scoop. The only route there to victory had to require a Star Requiem. Find that Roxanne, start that comeback potential. But it wasn't possible. So on this occasion, Patrick takes the first game.
Yeah, there was this little moment of like false security where you played down the escape rope, right? And Patrick was like, yeah, no worries. I got my Empoleon with the balloon, brought it up front, but then I was like, wait a minute, I also have my boss. Picking up the boss, then gets access to the flower select, but then he needed more puzzle pieces and he just didn't get them. He was like, hey, listen, I value my time. I need to make sure that I have enough time in the next games to set up, because like with this Lost Zone engine, it always takes a little bit of time to get into action. Once you are there, of course you can take the prize, but early on it takes a while to set up. So having enough time for game 2 and potentially game 3 is very valuable. And he decided scooping here, advance to the next game and see how well we can do there.
Yeah, I mean, Empoleon coming in, MVP at the start there, stopping the Comfey from flower selecting was huge because the Lost Zone count was so vital in that game. Constantly needed to be chased there by Jan. He was struggling to fill it out. And then also that Greninja coming in with the Moonlight Shuriken, because there's no Manaphy in Jan's list, Moonlight Shuriken gets so much value taking out 2 single prize Pokemon in 1 attack. Then you've got a single prize Pokemon in the active and so on and so on. It's such a good value attack if you can get it off, and it's why Manaphy is so commonly played across the hall. So amazing game plan there from the Palkia Kyurem, and might be the Greninja and Empoleon package to be able to counter there might be enough to counter this deck.
It's really interesting, the cycle of certain tech cards, right? You would see like Manaphy, for example, one of these like blocking damage to the bench cards, and if maybe a deck or maybe if decks that do a lot of sniping are very popular, then the mana fee count goes up. Then people stop playing those type of attacks. But with considering how strong that Raiding Greninja is, it will always be prevalent in this metagame.
I mean, we've all chucked our Jolteons deep in our binders thanks to mana fee. Like,
yes.
Jolteon was amazing. It was probably one of the best decks in format when Mew was popular. But then we all put that Jolteon into retirement, and now it's never going to see the light of day with mana fee in play. But we see that Crobat start. We do normally worry when we see Crobat start, but we do see a Battle VIP pass in hand there, so it's not going to be the worst start in the world, but Crobat in play is never what you want to see with your first, and then it also means the Empoleon effect that we saw last time is not going to be possible here.
Yeah, not quite away from the start. Like, you can, of course, bench it thanks to the Battle VIP pass, but then you need one more puzzle piece to actually like retreat that Crobat and get Empoleon into the active. And Jan is making perfect advantage of that, getting his Comfy into play, getting his own Raiding Greninja. We saw how important that was on both sides in the last game. Not only discarding energies, which is very important for, of course, Palkia Kyurem, but also just giving more drawing power.
And the advantage with Palkia Kyurem as a deck is they don't really need to play the Mana Fee, because the main threat that Mana Fee's blocking is the Moonlight Shuriken, but because all of their Pokemon are bigger than 90 hit points, they don't play that to block that, because if you do that, it's not the end of the world for them. It's normally with Inteleon lines, because you want to protect the Sobbles and Drizzles, or with that Lost Engine to protect those Pokemon there. So we'll be seeing the Greninja down more for the draw in this matchup, but that this really shows you how good that last turn was for Patrick. To go first, have the Empoleon in the active, have the full bench setup. It was the dream start last game for Patrick. So this one should be a lot closer after this starting hand.
Yeah, and we actually see that Jan once again has like 2 grass energies in hand, but because it's so early in the game, he can actually take them to his advantage and attach them early on, so the grass energies are already on the field, and then he can use the Mirage Gate later on in the game to fill up the energy cost and then start attacking. We haven't really seen any big attacks from Jan at all in the last game.
Interesting. When he was going through that deck search, saw the Empoleon, had a little look at it and went, not really, and then moved on past it, because Empoleon is only effective early on in the game to stop that early flower selecting, because now stuff's in the lost zone, they're going to get to that 7 count a lot easier, and at this stage the likelihood of an escape route to get it out of the way is much more possible, and it has to be pushed into the active. As you mentioned, the Crobat's there, and we start thinking about bench space then, because the Crobat is down, 1 bench space taken up by it. You're going to start thinking about all your other pieces, and you don't want to start putting the Empoleon down for the bench slot. Maybe later on when there's an opportunity and a free chance to bench something, it might get used to have that escape rope option as we saw before, but for the most part it's only really effective if you start it.
Yeah, bench space is actually very interesting aspect here. We have the Raiding Greninja that you want to have for extra drawing support. You need a Palkia, you need a Kyurem, and you need an Oranguru. So you're almost like limited to 4 Pokemon, or like you want those 4 Pokemon. You then also want to have the option to maybe play a Luminion when you need it, maybe a second Palkia or second Kyurem as second attackers here. So yeah, bench space is definitely limited, and with that Crobat already in the active spot, you might want to think twice about which Pokemon to bench.
And right now, Jan is going to be incredibly scared of that Greninja, because that potential to get rid of both Comfey not only will get 2 prizes, which is the kind of rhythm you want to see in this matchup of getting 2 prizes every time you attack, because it works out with the 2-2-2 line, but it also means the draw engine is gone. So Patrick will be looking to get the Palkia V-Star next turn, power up the Greninja, and start that attack with the Moonlight Shuriken. For now, it works as a great support on the draw engine, gets Waters into the discard pile, and helps out the Palkia for when the Star Portal gets activated.
Yeah, and we're looking at Irida getting out 1 item and 1 Pokemon, a water Pokemon. There's the Empoleon hitting the the hand, and then also the Capacious Bucket getting 2 more cards out. So just by playing Irida, you got like 4 cards out of his deck, thinning out the deck even further, giving him access to more water energies, and having that Empoleon as an option.
The only missing piece now is an Oranguru to help with the Kyurem next turn, but it's not needed right now. It could be used as a bit of extra search off the top of the deck, well, extra draw, I should say, where Empoleon right now searchable through Irida, because you have to search for a water Pokemon. But that Crobat, as long as it gets knocked out, then Patrick's going to be fine with the idea of having that bench full. Otherwise now, if he puts an Oranguru down, it's going to reduce the ability to use stuff like Luminion, for example, if he needs to search for that certain supporter later on.
Yeah, considering like the the Crobat is in the active position. I'm looking at the list. Switching options, I see 1 escape rope, 1 balloon. The balloon was very great to have on the Empoleon early on, and that is the escape rope actually. Making sure that your Crobat is leaving the active position and getting your Empoleon up to block abilities of those basic non-rule Pokemon.
Okay, so putting the Empoleon up. Obviously a smarter player than I, knows the usage of the Empoleon. As we said, it wasn't a priority. The other stuff was more important. Now, an extra bit of potential turn disruption. And the other thing as well, we've mentioned before several times, when you go 1-0 up in these best of threes and the time is of the essence, you do try and play a bit more aggressively, take big risks, hope that it works in your favor in that second game, because at the end of the day, if you lose it, you can always go game 3. So playing for the ultimate disruption with Empoleon, hoping that this blocks out the flower selecting from the Comfey this turn. I don't see was there an escape rope there in the Chorus experiment?
Yeah, I'm wondering as well, like that's the one big piece he needs to access here to increase his count even further. Currently at 4 for the Lost Zone counter. Yeah. He's playing 3 escape ropes, so if he finds a way to access that, however, is not...
There's 1 in the prizes.
There's 1 in the prizes, absolutely, so 2 more in the deck. He didn't get it off the Closed Experiment, and he didn't get it off the concealed cards either. So I think his drawing options are limited, or like are... for this turn specifically. So yeah, there's a Temple of Sinnoh, not a great effect at the beginning of the game. There's no wash energy in play either, so he's just passing along.
There's something we haven't really spoken too much about with this Giratina list. It's quite a high energy count with 13 energy. It does mean you do get these hands where you're just full of energy sometimes, and something we'll see a lot when Silver Tempest comes out. You know, Lugia is getting raved for being the best deck in format, but there will be hands for a lot of people where it will just be full of energy because there is so much of it in the deck. And that's why it's so important with these decks. Once you get going with the Mirage Gate on the side of Yan, or in the future for Silver Tempest with the Archeops, when you take those energies out of your deck and start attaching them, it thins your deck of cards you don't really want to top deck a lot of the time.
Absolutely. The action is back to Patrick here, quickly going for his deck again with a Quick Ball Search. We see the Luminion.
So the Quick Ball Search, he's already played the Luminion, playing very fast here, Patrick, so he gets a Luminion down, and I believe that's a Melanie in play, a very shiny Melanie, Rainbow Melanie. So some players will play Rainbows to help them when they're counting through their deck. Other players will just bling out their decks with them. Not sure what Patrick's stance is for the Melanie here, but if you've only got 1 supporter, for example, which is a Rainbow Rare, it's a lot easier to see it when going
in
through.
The deck storage, absolutely, absolutely. It makes it a little bit harder sometimes to identify the cards on stream, but yeah, that is a Melanie. It attaches 1 energy from the discard pile to 1 Warsaw Pokemon here, gets to that Empoleon, and also draws you 3 more cards.
Yeah, I think they should have called it Watery Welder when they came up with it, but maybe that's just me. I was a bit of a Welder fan back in the day, but Melanie also limited with only on Pokemon V cards. So on this occasion, the energy acceleration is going to be more focused around Melanie through the Palkia V-Star's V-Star ability of Star Portal. No Oranguru on the bench, so using Glaciated World would be a bit risky at this stage. You'd be hoping that the top of your deck is a Water Energy. You can't know for sure. So at this stage, we are seeing a little bit more of a V-based approach rather than the typical Oranguru Glaciated World approach.
Absolutely. But yeah, it's still in Patrick's mind. I think I saw the V-Star... yeah, that was the V-Star ability here. Flicked over his counter, gets 2 more energies on the
there we go.
Greninja. We talked about the Shuriken attack sniping 2 of the Comfeys. We saw that how powerful that was in game 1, and it's really hard for Jan to actually counter that. And I think this is a great showcase showing why Patrick is at this stage, why he's currently sitting at 25 points, because he has such a great time dealing with that Lost Zone engine.
Yeah, the main downside of Palkia Kyurem is consistency, and what we've seen here with Patrick's list and how he's played it, as it's been so consistent with that first hand, and the order of operation from Patrick has been beautiful. The way he's strung Iridas into concealed cards and so on. A very well knowledgeable player in his deck, and consequently has pulled off those early attacks multiple times. And we mentioned how important the Greninja is, not just because it takes 2 prizes, but because it leaves 1 prize in the active spot. So you're going to force your opponent to have to either use an escape rope, maybe a boss to gust the bench. And that means that the trade of prizes is much more in favor of Patrick at this stage.
Absolutely, absolutely. We see the Psychic Energy on the Giratina as well now. It's 2 energies. And we see the...
Oh, was that an Abyss Seeking?
Yes.
Oh, no. Yan!
I mean,
The Lost Zone!
Yeah, the Lost Zone coming down to Color's Experiment and the Best Seeking, basically. But getting up the counter to 8 now, getting two more cards in his hand as well, and giving him the option to attack there.
Can I just ask you, what's your favorite starter from Diamond and Pearl?
Diamond and Pearl, favorite... Oh. Is it Chimchar?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, it's Piplup because it turns into this wonderful Empoleon V right here, who's been the MVP in this game. I am actually an Empoleon fan. Great starters of that game, but Empoleon has been extraordinary in this game, the unsung hero of this deck, you could say. Greninja's getting all the spotlight, coming up and doing the Moonlight Shuriken. Oh, you see there the collapsed stadium to remove the Luminion from the bench as well. Just everything going well for Patrick here. Even after that Crobat start, which we were thinking, not sure about this one, but it's all flowed. The Empoleon came in, delayed one flower selecting was all it took to avoid the Mirage Gate. They were at 6 before they Abyss Seeking.
It's actually quite interesting. Like, he used that ability to discard the Luminion from the bench, then use Ordinary to mix it back into his deck, and then has the option, thanks to that Lost Vacuum,
unbelievable,
getting rid of that collapsed stadium and then having access to Luminion again. There was a great cycle to make sure that you get another supporter card.
This is outrageous play from Patrick. Anyone who's watching right now, you've just got to admire it. This is some of the best Pokemon cards we've seen at this event so far. Just the synergy and the usage of all of the different cards in effect together, recognizing the lack of mana fee to go down that Greninja route, bringing in the Empoleon at the right times, avoiding that Lost Zone number, getting to a point where the Mirage Gate is possible. Just everything is going well for Patrick here. The cards are drawing right, but also he's playing them perfectly.
And he gets himself access to another Melanie here. We'll attach one more water energy to a Pokemon V and draws you 3 more cards. A lot of puzzle pieces here. Attaches it to Palkia out of all Pokemon and draws 3 more cards. Capacious Bucket gets 2 more energies. He has the Oranguru ready, I believe. Actually quite not. Okay, but he has 2 more water energies. And let's see how he can make use of these energies and maybe get another attack off. I don't think that that Radiant Greninja's attack comes into effect any longer because there are no targets that would be KO'd with that 90 damage. So yeah, we're probably looking at a different attack, and it is the Palkia V-Star.
This, honestly, I'm blown away. And poor Yan on the other side, you've just got to feel for him because this isn't Yan's fault here. He's just getting disrupted perfectly. And that disruption is asking much tougher questions of Yan's deck. The Lost Zone box is so consistent, and the Lost Zone engine is so consistent because of the constant drawing through that flower selecting. That Empoleon is in there to disrupt it and ask, have you got an escape rope? And you start testing the opponent's ability to draw off the top of their deck. And the main way they draw is through flower selecting. So much disruption there. And as we mentioned, that high count of energy has been punished here. And at the end of the day, Yan hasn't drawn as well as he'd want to, but it has come down to that disruption from Patrick that has really forced his hand to be as bad as it has.
Yeah, and 2 more questions we have to ask the Ghost Houses. Is there an option to evolve your Giratina into Giratina V-Star this turn? And the other question, we have seen Arceus Giratina versions who just discard the double turbo energy as the second effect of the attack. However, that's not the option here. So if you would evolve and attack for 280, taking the knockout on that Palkia V-Star, you would have to put 2 of your energies into Lost Zone.
And at this stage, the only way I see Yan coming back into this is that Roxanne. We've seen it before. Palkia Kyurem's biggest weakness is late game disruption. Because so much of that energy gets discarded, whether it be through the Greninja or the Kyurem, a well-timed Roxanne would be effective. And on this occasion, Yan has to try and dig for it without Comfey. So right now, thinning his deck of energy with Mirage Gate after using that energy recycler, and he's going to hope to try and find a way to, I don't know, dig a bit deeper with concealed cards, which he's already used. Can't really do anything else because Colruy's Experiment will deny the ability to use a Roxanne. So it's really tough here for Yan, having to find cards that are 1 in, say, 30 with his deck. So not
it
a,
does make me wonder
nice
if he has the Giratina V-Star already in hand, ready to be played. Because the Mirage Gate, of course, getting 2 more energies into play, which could be used as the discard effect. So we see a Sableye hitting the bench. I don't think that will attack here. An escape rope to use the concealed card once more, getting a balloon attached as well. He ideally looking at an energy card in his hand as well that he can discard.
There it is.
There is the Roxanne. You mentioned it.
Yeah, Roxanne. disruption. The opponent will have to shuffle their hand into their deck and draw 2 for their hand. Meanwhile, Jan will get to shuffle his hand into his deck and draw 6. So a great comeback mechanic for Jan here. And as we see, the knockout potential on Palkia could lead to only 1 energy on board for Patrick.
Yeah, one of the greatest comeback cards in the past was that N supporter card. It's quite interesting to see that in this specific case, it is exactly a Jan at 6 price cards and Palkia or Patrick at 2. So this is pretty much the same effect as playing N late in the game.
What a
6
throwback.
cards. Yeah, let's see if Jan maybe can get the Giratina V-Star out of those 6 cards.
Well, just to judge here, just asking
checking
some
the
questions.
energy attachments. I think there was a manual attachment to the active Giratina and 2 energies through the Mirage Gate to the benched one. There's the evolution.
And we mentioned about the Star Requiem and how important that is to knock out the Kyurem. So then that's where the Wash energy might come in and the Temple of Sinnoh. So there's going to be some interesting interactions coming up as we see the first... yes, all of the non-relevant energy types for the attacks. So the water energy and the capture energy going to be removed from both Giratinas.
Yeah, and that's we talked about this yesterday, and you asked me like what I like about Giratina, and that's exactly the power. 280 damage for 3 energies, taking out Pokemon such as that Palkia V-Star are just great. And you still have your 2 energies attached. You have your Lost Zone counter currently at 10 according to the slide, so it should have the access to Star Requiem as well, so you could potentially take knockout back to back. Kyurem at the moment at 1 energy.
No Guru.
No Guru, right? I think the V-Star power was already used from that Palkia earlier, so it's quite hard to actually set up that Kyurem to make sure that it knocks out the opposing Giratina V-Star, and in return a Star Requiem is threatening another knockout. However, Jan currently at 4 price cards, needs to take 2 more big knockouts.
Oh, VIP pass, not what you want to see at this stage, but it is an option to discard, and then that will allow to get the Oranguru, I assume, which you can put on the bench, get a water energy on top. So there will be an attack here from Kyurem, but probably won't look to discard any of the energy. But again, that puts you in a really rough spot where you've then got no energy on board. Needs the choice belt to bump that 270 damage from a full discard of 3 energy up to enough to knock out Giratina V-Star, which we only see 2 of those in the list. And when you've got a hand from Roxanne, it can be quite tricky to find.
There's the Oranguru. I think 1 water energy will hit the top of the deck. And let's see what he can draw off that Oranguru, of course, as well, of course.
Did we get there?
Closely.
Was that a training court? So a training court there.
Gives you access to 1 more energy from your discard pile, but not exactly what he needs here, and Patrick doesn't seem to be too happy. I think one potential way for Patrick to win this, of course, would be attacking twice. But even then, to attack with his Kyurem, he needs 3 water energies. Would potentially only do 120, but
it's not surviving. It ain't surviving. There's a Giratina there and a V-Star marker still facing up. That Star Requiem's going to come out. This is a rough spot, and this is exactly what we spoke about earlier on. We said that Roxanne is the most deadly situation for Palkia Kyurem. It's one of its biggest weaknesses right now as a deck, and at the end of the day, you've got to play around it, right? You know that Roxanne's going to punish you, so you have to play maybe a little bit more conservatively, not go for that rushed panic knockout, but we did say Patrick's in game 2 here. He might play a bit more aggressively to try and force the win early. So on this occasion, this could be a rough final few turns for him in this game.
Yeah, I'm looking at this, like, and 270 discarding this 3 energies is not quite enough. The other question is, could Patrick in next turn set up another attacker? Looking at that Raiding Greninja, that's 3 energies. That's quite hard to set up. The Empoleon also needs 3 energies. Oranguru needs, like, it's very hard actually to find another attacker for the next turn.
The way I see it would be if he gets the 270 on, then there would be potential to have, I don't know, a snipe from the... Oh, no, even that wouldn't work because it's 3 energies too much to get.
It's really hard to set up next turn.
There's no Palkia ready to turn into a Palkia V-Star.
Interesting choice. He's discarding 1 water energy.
Yeah,
so he's doing
Kyurem's not sticking around.
Damage.
I'm sorry, Patrick. I hate to break it to you, but that Kyurem's going straight to the discard pile.
Absolutely. Taking 2 more prizes, but then again, Jan still needs to find another knockout, but there's no attacker lined up for Patrick. Nothing ready to attack next turn. And the Kyurem, that Giratina V-Star, currently at 2 energies, 1 more attachment next turn, and he can just take another knockout with 280 damage. Maybe like discarding 2 more, or like putting 2 more energies into your Lost Zone, but at that point you've won the game and it doesn't matter anymore.
And you can see here Jan just setting up another attacker just in case. It's important to get as much energy in play as well for the next attack. But at this point, I see Patrick has played the game near perfectly, maybe just a little bit too aggressively this game, you could say, which has led him to have not enough energy in play once that Roxanne came out. But realistically, there wasn't much more he could do. He's just trying to play aggressively to steal that Game 2 win, especially going second with a Crobat start. He's done so well to get this close to winning. But wonderful play from Jan, recognizing his outs with the Roxanne, setting up around it, not panicking, just playing his way through it. Knows that that's the way to come back against this deck, and here we are.
And I like the setup. Like, it looked very slow at the beginning. He had to like fight to increase his loss on counter. But the moment his Mirage Gates were accessible, the moment he could use them, you could just see how powerful that Giratina V-Star is.
And you just saw there the final card going into the loss zone needed to get it up to 10 for Star Requiem. Something I'd missed there, because you just assume that these days with the way that that the deck plays with early flower selecting, that you're going to hit that 10 pretty easily. But that has been a challenge in this matchup because of the Empoleon early on. But Chorus Experiment getting it up above 10, and now Star Requiem is a possibility. And he's going to retreat and go with the higher hit point one, just adding another out requirement for the next turn for Patrick, just giving everything in his favor. If there's a way to do it, it requires both a supporter to accelerate energy and now a supporter to gust with boss's orders. So
yeah, we talked about this very high energy count, but it actually allowed him to attach 5 energies in this turn in total, being able to pay the retreat cost, making sure that your damaged Giratina is on the bench, but still having enough energy overall on the board to be able to attack and take that knockout. So Kyurem VMAX knocked out. 3 prizes taken for Jan, so he technically only needs a KO on a single prize Pokemon, but he's threatening the KO on any of the remaining Pokemon from Patrick. He's actually promoting that Empoleon, using concealed cards, drawing through his deck, and I think it's very clear that if he's not preventing the knockout in the next turn, this game is going to Jan. So he's going through his options, using Oranguru's ability to see the top deck, but yeah, like, Patrick doesn't seem to be too happy towards this endgame.
Yeah, and for both these players, they're in a really good spot now, 8-1-1. They do trust that the draw would be a good result, but realistically, they want to get that win, put them in a great spot for the future. So Patrick going to scoop that one up. Jan taking that game with an amazing comeback with the Roxanne. What a performance.
And once again, it's tied 1-1 with roughly 10-15 minutes left on the clock. I'm really excited to see if Empoleon isn't hitting the field too early, then Jan might get an early setup, might get his Comfys into play, might get the Colress, and once he hits that 7 benchmark and taking out knockouts, like, he has this potential to take big knockouts very early on. He needs a setup, but then it's knockout back to back to back. So I see the potential to actually, like, coming back into this game, and because Patrick has to play down all these VMAX and V-Star Pokemon, he has the prizes on the board for Jan to take.
My goodness, let's take a deep breath, go into that third game. What a game we're watching here. That's probably my favorite game of the weekend. That was unbelievable. Just the start, the way that Palkia Kyurem deck flowed and managed to get into that strong position, but then the Roxanne completely capitulated the game plan and turned it into a comeback for the Giratina V-Star. I'm blown away by the level these guys are playing at.
Absolutely, and I'm sure that Patrick will go back to that game 2, review, and maybe see potential to improve in the future as well. But yeah, it looked quite commanding towards the beginning, but then once the energy acceleration was activated, like, that Giratina V-Star was just too powerful.
I mean, if there was one more energy on that Kyurem VMAX at some point during that period, then that would have been the potential to get the knockout. And we saw no Oranguru went on the bench early, which allows you to get an earlier Kyurem VMAX Glaciated World, and had that happened, that might have been enough to get the knockout. So we all have a heavy ball to start with. Let me just check my prizes so I don't have to think about deck checking.
There's actually, I think, 3 basic Pokemon in there. I see the Oranguru, I think I see a Kyurem. We missed that early on when they set out the prizes. There's also a Quick Ball, Collapse Stadium, but enough choice to pick from, and he's actually going for the Palkia V. He knows that one of his Orangurus are in the prizes now, so he's hoping to soon draw into the other one. And you talked about Oranguru not being on the field. Part of that was because he had to start with that Crobat taking up 1 spot.
Exactly. So the Crobat start last game, in the end, much more impactful than we thought. Luminion had to be used as well. We saw the Collapse Stadium play with that. So Luminion was a necessity there. So had Crobat not been in that starting position, it would have been a whole different game. And that's just how it goes sometimes. When you play a basic Pokemon that acts as a supporting role, it can sometimes be your opener, which you don't want. If it's got a interplay effect like Crobat and Luminion do, it's never where you want to start.
There was also another puzzle piece we mentioned towards earlier in the first game. It is the Wash Energy. Had Patrick been accessed the Wash Energy earlier in the second game, he could have prevented that Star Requiem as well. But he didn't find that piece either, so it was very unfortunate. And he actually has to attach it to that Radiant Greninja to potentially snipe 2 Comfies again. But Patrick, having 1 Comfy, having access to the ability, and having Battle VIP Pass to go for first deck search and find 2 more basic Pokemon to bench.
Yeah, I think these 2 decks are definitely the better decks in this format right now to pinch a win in a shorter Game 3. Both of them able to get quick knockouts and having a lot of prizes available on the board. It does allow for that back and forth 3-turn race. So once they both get up and running, we'll definitely be able to see potential for a result here. We saw with Patrick, he's 1 turn away from winning the game last time, and then Roxanne came in and disrupted that. So with that similar game plan here, we'll definitely see Patrick. And Patrick wants to get in there early, right? He wants to get in there before the Lost Zone becomes active, wants to disrupt the Lost Zone and get the win before that 10 count comes in and Star Requiem can take his Kyurem.
Yeah, and we see how important that's that Radiant Greninja is. Both players opting to play it, discarding energies, drawing more cards, getting more options, and the first flower select is actually putting a grass energy, 1 out of 3 grass energies, into your Lost Zone.
Right, so we see the typical flower selecting approach here, trying to get through that deck, build up that Lost Zone. And at this stage, there's going to be thought for the future. We've mentioned how the Lost Zone build up with the Mirage Gate being the first target, and then that second target really being Star Requiem number of 10. It also activates the Lost Mine, not so effective in this matchup because there's a lot of big bulky Pokemon on Patrick's side. You don't really have the time to sprinkle 120 damage around. And the Cramorant early on can be a nice little poke at the beginning of the game if you don't power something up. But again, it's that bench space that's taken up. It's that extra component you have to try and find whilst you're searching. And what we do see here is the Cramorant is in the prizes, which is a one-of in Jan's list.
Yeah, one-off that he won't have access to early on in the game. I like the dynamic between the 2 players, how they anticipate the actions and actually keep track of the Lost Zone counter together. So Patrick is taking over the dice and making sure that the count is correct. That's 4. Another interaction, maybe I'm sure that most of our viewers are aware, but the interaction between a discard pile and Lost Zone is quite interesting. While you discard your cards into discard pile and have access to them through some supporter cards, as the name says, the Lost Zone, all cards that end up in the Lost Zone are lost for the rest of the game. You do not have access to them in any way or shape before.
And I think this current use of the Lost Zone is the most interesting it's ever been in Pokemon. The fact that the number of cards in that Lost Zone and how important it's being used as part of these decks. Some decks are getting 13 to 15, I think we saw yesterday, into that Lost Zone. So a lot of cards being put in a place where they can't be brought back. Definitely a fun mechanic there. And in this matchup, you said the Lost Zone counter gets counted by both players. And why do these players want to keep track of their opponent's board state?
I mean, they want to be aware of hey, when does my opponent have the threat of maybe playing a Cramorant down, attacking for 4? How far away from playing Mirage Gate are they? So just keeping track, making sure that, hey, they're only using attacks they're supposed to use, and looking into future turns, how far are they away? How soon is the threat coming up of accelerating those energies and getting Giratina V-Star active and ready to go to attack. We see an Irida being played, so access to 1 water Pokemon and an item there, getting the Capacious Bucket, and we have seen quite similar turns in the past as well, getting 4 cards out of your deck through that 1 single supporter.
Yeah, and we've seen it as well with a lot of these top players. They start tracking all of the next few steps with their front of deck before they exit the deck search. So bringing those 2 waters to the front behind the Capacious Bucket, knowing they're going to come with the card there. And there's a second Oranguru, so 2 in the list, 1 in the prizes. That's why it wasn't taken from the prizes earlier, and instead the Palkia was chosen. This occasion, Oranguru is there. And as we mentioned, the starts in those first 2 games, except for the Crobat in that last game, were near perfect for Patrick.
Yeah, we actually saw the concealed cards towards the beginning of Patrick's turn, which actually got him access to Kyurem and that Oranguru. So 2 great combo cards to get together, especially. But yeah, you want that Kyurem VMAX soon to make use of that ability combined with that Oranguru.
Okay, so the attachment this turn will be going on Kyurem maybe there. Just changing mind, going for the Palkia instead. Palkia, a great attacker into the unevolved Giratina. The moment it becomes full size, you have to try to find the choice belt. You have to have full benches on both sides. But we do see 2 energy being discarded by the the Greninja. Moonlight Shuriken coming through, going to take 2 Comfey out of the game. Oh no, just the one Comfey.
1 Comfey and 90 damage on that Giratina. But yeah, reducing the Comfeys out of the field once again, pretty strong. And it's impressive how Patrick back to back was able to pull that off.
Yeah, and the smart thing here from Jan, only having 1 Comfey available, so good adjustment from him there. Previously having 2 on the board, that's typical board state for the Comfey, so you can quickly switch between them. On this occasion, not allowing that Moonlight Shuriken to get full value. And as we mentioned, that 2-2-2 prize race is the optimal route for Patrick, but if there was only 1 available through that Moonlight Shuriken, it's going to skew the numbers and force Patrick to take 4 knockout turns.
Yeah, another aspect I want to talk about is Palkia V-Star's ability. So we have seen how it accelerates 3 energies from the discard pile, and typically that is used to power up that Kyurem. Kyurem was short of energies in the last turn, and that's specifically because the ability was used to power up the Radiant Greninja. So it's really interesting to see how, yes, you get the early snipes, you get Comfey out of the field, but at the same time you're lacking the energies you need on Kyurem later on in the game.
Oh, 100%, and it can also be a way to get out of Roxanne, right? If you hold that V-Star early on, you can pull it off after a Roxanne, or like you said, you can put it onto that Kyurem so the Kyurem doesn't feel like it needs to accelerate so much. And actually what you see here is double Comfey are back down, and I think this is where the Moonlight Shuriken is so hard to power up, because Melanie is a way to power up V cards, but it's not going to work against on the Greninja. So it's going to be relying on a Glaciated World as the only option to get 2 water energy in 1 turn on Greninja.
Yeah, to potentially snipe again 90. Now, because Palkia's ability was used and Moonlight Shuriken was used, I feel like Jan was more confident to actually play 2 Comfeys down here. Used both abilities, now brings up Luminion and shuffles that back into his deck, I believe, with the Aqua Return.
Okay, I didn't think we'd be seeing an Aqua Return in this match, but a way to get rid of that Luminion from the bench as well and keep the Comfey in play. So one of the Comfey was scooped up into Jan's hands, so again to protect from that Greninja snipe. And so we're seeing a management of board state here from Jan, as he can't find the V-Star in time, but does have Mirage Gate on activation, so he can start looking to power them up in a pinch once he gets the V-Star down.
Also another aspect is like he needed that Star Requiem to take out the Kyurem VMAX. Now having used Aqua Return, dealing 120 damage and shuffling the Pokemon and all attached cards back into your deck meant he has the energies on deck to make use of Mirage Gate later on again, and also has 120 damage on the Kyurem, which means if it evolves, it's down to 190 of the 310 HP. So an easier attack, easier time for that Giratina, and not having to use a Star Requiem to take out the Kyurem VMAX.
Yeah, and also the energy is all going back in with it, so they'll be available for future Mirage Gates. So Luminion coming in here for an attack. I didn't think I'd be saying that in this matchup, despite it being in both decks and water available for both of them to use it. And we're going to be seeing Patrick now trying to get that return knockout. And the advantage we've got here, based off of that first turn with Greninja, is going for a 1 prizer here is not too big an issue, because you're going to at some point have to take out the 1 prizer to get it back onto even prize cards. So right here, they're just having a discussion around a card being played. And this is something that's really important to note with Pokemon. Yes, there's judges about, and on our main table we do have a judge available, but Pokemon trading card game is self-officiated. So these guys keep track of board state, keep track of their opponent's board state, their own board state. Like we said earlier, counting the lost zone. It's only when there's an issue where something comes up where neither of them can resolve it together, they'll get a judge involved and find the rules out and get some help there.
Absolutely. Like we talked about this dynamic in the last game where Pedro and Magnus was actually like keeping track of the counter together, making sure that all actions are correct, especially if you play so fast towards the end of the game. But Jan, very rightfully so, was making sure that everything was going right off. And potentially this was one card drawn too many. I'm not quite sure what's happening here right now, but I'm sure that the judges, they will find out soon. This is also... seems like time is over actually, so we're heading into a very late game as well. So all these factors are playing a big role here, and I think Jan has made his case, and we're currently waiting for judge interaction. He's pointing at the card, not quite sure what he means there, but we'll find out soon. Judge is actually taking over the card and looking at, was that maybe Orangu's ability and how it would use and how it came into effect?
Yeah, we'll find out in a bit. We'll let the judges resolve that one, let the players talk it out, and I think this is the challenge with any kind of game like this, where there's so much room for error. You know, I'm talking from experience. I forgot to take prizes in the final of a tournament once,
yes.
And I'd never forgot to take prizes before that. It's just one of those. Once you get into the higher pressure situations, you're thinking about everything going on. You're playing at a higher level. Mistakes do happen, and it can be just accidentally knocking a card over, for example.
And another important part of factor is, like, most players are using Pokemon Trading Card Game Online, or maybe the upcoming Pokemon Trading Card Live, to actually practice, and it helps you sequencing because it tells you exactly what options are available, and it makes it like limits the options of errors. However, playing in person with those cards, like, it's quite harder, like, to keep all this sequencing in mind, making sure that you don't draw too many cards because it's not automated. So that's quite a few options to consider. But of course, with so much on the line here, we're talking about the regional championships. You want to make sure that everything is going right.
Yeah, well, we'll be seeing what goes on with the rest of that. Obviously, time reached on the round 2, so we'll find out what's going on there in a little bit. But you mentioned about the playing online and converting it into in-person. We've seen quite a few players recently who made their name online, played a lot of the online series, and then they're coming
through that pandemic as well, when everything was online.
And now they're coming along to these events and doing amazingly well because they've had a chance to practice the game over and over again. So if anyone at home is watching right now and you only play online and you're thinking, maybe I could give this a go in person, and you don't have many cards yourself, find a way to get a few cards, maybe get a cheaper deck, look to maybe get a friend lend you a deck.
Those Lost Zone engines with single prizes, they're typically very cheap because they're not blinked out, don't have these big Pokemon V cards, and you see how well they're doing in these tournaments as well. Yeah. So the entry level is actually quite easy, or like it's quite easy to jump into that action. But also, if you haven't played at all yet, make sure to check out Pokemon.com/play to get more information on how to access tournaments, what's going on worldwide. We're launching our global circuit, just our international tournaments in Brazil, Australia, and in America have been announced, and there's so much more Pokemon to play, and maybe there might be Pokemon tournaments near you that you're not aware. So make sure to check out all our dates, all our locations all over the world. We have tournaments in Europe, tournaments in Australia just have been announced, a couple of regionals,
much going on,
tournaments in all over America as well.
There's a tournament around the corner from me in London. I mean, when you say about going to play Pokemon, both times I've moved to a new city, the first thing I do is, where's the nearest Pokemon place? And both times they've been in walking distance for me. I've accidentally nailed being close to a really good local community. So hopefully that's the case for you. And if not, I'm sure you'll find something nearby. And if not, turn up at the events, play online. And you can, I promise you now, if you're an online-only player, you can make it far. I got a chance to chat with Goof GG, who used to play Pokemon Unite, and he's come along to this, and he's done a few events. You might have seen the interviews between games. And he was saying, okay, yeah, he's still not as good in person as he is online, but the experience of playing in person, he's really enjoying it and meeting everybody. So,
making most use of your cards as well, of course. Like, we have a lot of collectors who might have all these beautiful cards, and they've never actually made use of them beyond just collecting. So bringing them to a tournament, sleeving them up, making sure you're ready to play. But on top of our regional championships, we also have a bunch of side events. So maybe if this is your first event and you're not reaching for that day 2, we still have more action to be played all over the weekend. Entry-level tournaments, small 8-people pods. We have the Gym Leader Challenge. Very interesting format as well. Maybe
I like watching Gym Leader Challenge. I'm not smart enough to work out how to do that. I like watching other people play it, like Andrew Mahone, and see how they get on with it. But just so you guys at home know what's going on right now, we're currently in round 11.
Yes.
I've just been watching an amazing feature game. It's been probably my favourite game of the tournament so far. And we just reached time. And around the point where we reached time, there was a judge call, which we're waiting on, finding out what it was. And off the back of that, we'll see whether the players want to carry on, because it was quite early on in the game. So I don't know if they feel like there's enough time with what's left. And obviously with judge calls, it can add a bit of extra time into the play.
Absolutely, and keep in mind, like if you're currently in chat, I think exclamation point pairings actually gives you the link to the pairings as well, which will help you to figure out all the results, not only from the featured match, from all the matches all over the board. We have 75 players in day 2. 8 of them after 5 rounds will make it to that top 8 cut. So a lot of Pokemon to be played. We have a lot of action going on, and if you're following one specific player, make sure to check out the pairings, see how they're doing at the moment, who they may be playing. Maybe you can figure out which matchups they're playing and how well they're doing. We'll have more information on matchups, on Pokemon, like cards and decks being used, like so much more to come.
Yeah, I guess a quick little chat debate. Who's got the better pin badge? Because you've got a little Eternatus there.
Yeah, make sure
it goes really well with your jacket, actually.
Yes.
And I've got the Palkia origin form here, and our lovely Alex, who we can see but you guys can't, has got an Arceus, which goes very nice with his tan jacket. So let me know which one of those pins you like the best. I really like this Eternatus with jacket look.
Yeah, I saw it this morning. You actually brought it over from you, Mike. That was very, very grateful there. But yeah, like maybe that Eternatus is not as popular right now in the trading card game. We have seen it in previous formats, filling up the bench with 8 Pokemon and
really
dealing
testing
more damage.
locals' table sizes.
Yes.
It was. I wonder if my local has a big enough table where I can play Eternatus and not go into the next person's deck, and also playmats. You know, playmats.
Yes.
How can you fit 8 cards on there? But we are having a lot of fun here at Warsaw. You know, the first time a Pokémon Regional has been in Poland. Really exciting for the local players as well. Managed to meet a load of those. They've all been so lovely and excited to be here. We were about to have. No, just let it happen. Just let it happen.
Wait,
you don't know what's
this was not planned. What is happening? Okay, there's literally a balloon dropping from. Okay, this is. Wait, and now. Okay, it's
there is currently a game
going
on, guys.
up?
We promise.
Okay.
We promise. There is a game. Oh.
No. Okay, yeah, but there's so much more to feature as well. We will be crowning our first Polish regional champion here as well, of course. I talked about this in the last section, that we'll also feature juniors and seniors today. We might feature more balloon action as well, not only in game, but then.
Sorry, we've just got Alex off camera getting the balloon away, because I don't know where that's come from.
Who was sabotaging the stream? Like, they sent it all over from the crowd, and it was like, let it drop exactly in front of the camera. That was very precise.
I mean, if anyone's tuning in right now, they're probably wondering what on earth is going on. And I keep mentioning it. We are waiting for the round 11 feature table match to find out what's going on there with the judge call. Potentially, just based off of what I could see, the game looked like it was probably going to go to a draw just based off of time alone. Both players 8-1-1, so in a really good spot. If they do get a draw, they're still in a very strong spot to potentially make that top 8. But it was an amazing back and forth. Kieran Palkia and Giratina V-Star. Oh, here we go.
We're actually back in the action, and it seems like there was a time attention potentially as well. Currently looking at 6 minutes. So yeah, time extension to figure out what was done. Makes me wonder how much time was actually left, because we thought it was time over. But back into game 3. Back into the action. I don't see any prizes being taken, so there was no prize penalty for sure. But yeah, we've yet to find out what the ruling was. But yeah, game is back on, and we have 6.5 minutes. That's actually quite a lot.
If there is a prize penalty, we'll have to let you know, because the way it works is you keep them there. It just means that they're taken.
Have to draw less prizes.
But at this stage, we know as much as you guys do, and we'll let you know once we know. But this is definitely a even board state. Both sides could come back here. We were about to witness the Palkia knock out that Greninja, putting it to 4-6, and we did have a little bit of fun while we were waiting. And for you guys, that time extension does mean we're back in the game. We're back in the running to see a result here.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we started the game with almost like less than 10 minutes. Now having 5 or 6 more minutes with this whole setup being in play is, of course, a lot of options to be taken for both players here. We see concealed cards once more, drawing 2 more cards, and you also see like the pace of play has just been increased once again, because both players know with that time extension there's the potential to take out enough Pokemon to actually win this game here. So yeah, it's currently Patrick's turn. Going through the options in his hand, we can't quite see the hand cards, but he has quite a few of them. Bringing back Empoleon. I think at this point, like, blocking ability is not as prevalent or like as important, but of course that's another potential attacker.
It's really got to think about the Roxanne again now. We mentioned how last time was left with Kyurem on the board, not enough energy on it to get the knockout in the Giratina, and it really stumped him for the rest of that game. So this time maybe thinking a little bit more about not just getting the knockouts, but what can he do if he gets Roxanne back with a knockout?
Yeah, that's one option to keep in mind. Looking at the loss on counter again, we're currently at 7. We saw, if you already forgot about that, we saw the Luminion attack with the Acro Return. That's why the Kyurem VMAX has that 120 damage over there back into the deck, which means the energies and the Luminion back. And potentially, we don't exactly remember what Jan was featuring in his hand right now, but if he has access to more of those Mirage Gates and finding the Giratina V-Star, because that's currently not in play yet. It's 2 regular Giratina Vs, so he needs energy acceleration, and he needs that Mirage, the Giratina V-Star to then start taking those big knockouts.
Right, and you can see here just doing everything possible to thin the deck, get everything out. As we mentioned, it's key for that Roxanne. Every card that's taken out of the deck and utilized, maybe put in play, will make a difference. And this is the key to good players, is they thin every possible card they can, and utilize those energy where possible. So we saw a glaciated world, it seems. As you can see, that Kyurem just tilted slightly to the side to represent that, and that probably is what accelerated to the Palkia in the active spot, the wash energies from ages ago, and there's the turn attachment onto the Kyurem. The knockout on the Greninja puts him down to 4 prizes, and as we mentioned, trying to do everything possible to avoid getting Roxanne in the future. Right now, safe from it because still on 4 prizes left. But next turn, we'll be really thinking about how to accelerate and put as much energy into play that will be useful for a future turn.
I think Jan potentially needs 3 more knockouts, right? If he gets the Giratina V-Star here, taking 280 damage on the Palkia V-Star, that's 1 knockout, 2 prizes. If he then maybe gusts up or finds access to that Kyurem VMAX, there would be another 3 prizes, and then any other KO at that point would do it. So 3 more attacks really for Jan, with 3 minutes and 3 extra turns. That's quite a bit of time.
You mentioned the wash energy early on in the game, had to be used as an attachment onto the Greninja, so it's not an option to be able to protect the Kyurem from a Star Requiem. Well, pseudo-protect it, because the Temple of Sinnoh could come in and make it redundant. But we see here Comfey going to be doing that flower selecting. That's going to put the Lost Zone up to 10. Good work, Lost Zone button presser in there before Patrick. And we see this as the final opportunity to try and accelerate a Giratina V-Star. That will be key to try and get the next knockout on Palkia. And as we mentioned, both these decks very aggressive in the way they get knockouts. So the moment we're within range of 2 knockouts, so for Patrick he is right now, with 4 prizes left, there is every possibility that when we hit time, within that turn 0 through 3, they'll be able to get the knockouts.
And there we go. Giratina now at 3 energies. Because of that first energy attachment, he...
Ooh. There we go. Puts that down onto the Giratina V.
We talked about this early on, but yeah, he technically had played down that Giratina V-Star. We'll let it up to the players. Jan doesn't seem to be too happy after all. Yeah, like, you need to make sure that you evolve the right Pokemon. I think he tried to play down the Giratina V-Star to take the damage counter up to then play it on top of that, but for a second it looked like he evolved the other Giratina. Of course, with that free energies, you want to make sure that your energy Giratina evolves to be able to attack. And this might very well end up in another judge call, making sure that actions being played actually have to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, we see a lot of these top players half playing cards down, and they keep the card still facing themselves, so they haven't fully revealed them to the table. The moment a card is played is the moment that it's considered in play, and it's very tricky to know what that point is. Everyone has their own sort of idea of what that is. Some people believe it's once you let go of the card, for example. Some people be once you put it on the table face up. There's so many different ways people are able to interpret that, and at this occasion Patrick is just questioning whether he believed that was in play or not, we believe. So wait for the judges there.
Absolutely, and you might very well think well, obviously he wanted to evolve that charged up Giratina V, right? But it's not up to us or any of the players to assume what would have been the correct action. So making sure that it is very clear, not ambiguous, what you want to do, where your energies go, where your cards go, how to evolve, how to play down cards. So yeah, you mentioned how some players, they maybe don't put it on top of a card.
They'll do the sort of the bendy push thing where they put it down.
We started with the water energy on the Kyurem VMAX earlier, where he was planning to attach it, but then hadn't let go and poked it back into his hand. Then
and again,
because
it's sort of not been fully placed on the table, so it's still it's tough. And equally, there's some ambiguous areas like calling out an attack, for example. But we are back in play
here.
here.
We see the judge call. The evolved Giratina actually counts as evolved because the card was played down. So he does not have access to that attack this turn, of course. Yeah, very unfortunate there, but you see, even on this very high pressure situation in game 3 of round 11, simple, very tiny mistakes can cost you the option to win this game here.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, the game is self-officiated until the point where there is a dispute, and that's where the judges come in. And we're very fortunate here on the feature table to be able to live stream everything, so we can make those calls a lot easier because we can see everything nice and clearly. There is a judge there watching closely as well, so everything is done very fairly here on the main table. And Jan will be remembering that for a long time, and this is part of experience, right? The more you play, the more top tournaments you play in, you make every mistake once in your career, and that might be the first time for him he's had to make that mistake.
And it's really interesting how suddenly the focus has shifted from potentially winning the game with the tax-free Giratina Vista to make sure that, well, at least if I, through that tiny mistake, not be able to win anymore, at least make sure to not lose the game and secure a draw and one more point.
And just from personal experience, I find that once there is one or two judge calls for whatever reason or a dispute, it can throw you off a little bit. And so you start to lose a bit of focus and start playing in a way that's not in control. And you see right here, Jan is the body language shows, and as all of us would be, after making a mistake like that, you're going to be frustrated as it's taken your ability to win out of the game, and it might go in the favor of the opponent to take the win with no real hope for yourself. And so right now, Jan is just doing everything he can to finish off this game and hope that he can maybe force it into a draw, because that detrimental V-star placement has put him in a very rough spot.
Yeah, we talked how like 3 more attacks, maybe like we don't know if there's another time extension through that tiny judge call here and how much more time they have, but potentially had he been able to attack there and take out the Palkia, that's the first attack, and then if before time's run out he gets to announce the second attack, he has one more turn to take the final knockout. So like this path is not available anymore. Maybe he draws into another Giratina V-star, evolves the other one and be able to attack, but it's very hard to actually draw the remaining 6 prizes.
Yeah, and at this point, we've had an amazing back and forth here. The second game in particular was incredible. It looked like Kieran Palkia had the game on board, and then Roxanne came out. Jan played it amazingly, got that comeback, and did exactly what this deck can do, which is set up well, get that Roxanne off, and get the comeback. And at this stage, the players, I believe, have agreed to a draw there as time has been reached.
Yes, there was a fist bump. We saw a tie in yet another round. Jan not particularly happy, but I think what separates the good from the very good players is making sure that this doesn't throw you off for the rest of the tournament. He had an excellent start, 8-1-1, now 8-1-2, still and looking at 26 points, very good start. Make sure to keep the composure, not let it throw you off, and maybe like focus on the last remaining rounds to maybe potentially secure that top 8 spot.
Right, let's just do a little reload. Let's go back and see what we've just seen in our heads. So started off an amazing game 1. Kieran Palkia hit all of the beats from the off, and Polion in the active, and was able to block off that flower selecting. And then from there, first game unwinnable for the Giratina V-star. Just it was too good from Kieran Palkia. Game 2.
Game 2 was a different story where he was able to actually get his Lost Zone counter up through multiple colors experiment and the initial first 2 flower select there. Once it was up to 7, through the merge gate, powering up the Giratina and then keep continuing to attack and securing that Game 2 win.
With that, Roxanne was unbelievable. And then on that final game there, just too close at the end, not enough time left to play, so it goes to a tie. Let's not forget the balloon that made an appearance halfway through.
Both we were in game and out of game.
We were waiting for that judge call. But I think we're going to be going to a quick break here, just because this game has gone on quite late. The next rounds want to start as soon as possible. So after that drama-filled match with amazing gameplay and judge calls, I think it's time to go for a quick break and reset, go into the next round.
And then see you for the next round.